Long, long ago, before ships carved lines across the Atlantic, before even the first whisper of the white man's shadow reached the coasts of our land, there was a time when Africa stood tall. It was the age of ancestors. The drums beat like the heartbeat of the soil, and firelight was more than flame, it was memory. The sky poured its blessings freely, and the rivers knew the names of every soul who bathed in them. In the heart of the forested lands of the West, perched like a crown upon a gentle hill, lay Igbo, a kingdom untouched by conquest, proud and self-reliant, blessed with storytellers, hunters, and farmers whose feet danced to the rhythm of the earth. In this sacred kingdom, under the great Iroko tree at the village square, there lived a man whose music was said to carry the voice of the gods themselves. His name was Ifosa. Ifosa was not merely a man, he was rhythm and soul carved into flesh, a custodian of melody, bearer of beauty. His flute, a simple bamboo hollow, became divine in his hands. When he played, it was as if the wind paused to listen and the forest held its breath. Mothers stopped grinding, warriors stilled their spears, and children's eyes lit like stars around the fire. They said his music could mend a soul broken beyond repair. His tunes flowed like honey over wounds unseen. One time, when Neddy, the village potter's daughter, had taken ill with a fever that robbed her of breath and voice, no healer could help. But Ifosa came and sat at the edge of her mat. He raised his flute and played a song so soft, so sorrowful, that even the shadows wept. By morning, Omoyi's chest rose strong again, her breath dancing with the melody that lingered in the air. His music did not only heal. There was a year, known in Igbo lore as Ule, the season of withering, when the skies refused to weep. For moons, no drop fell. The yam vines withered, the goats bleated in thirst, and dust danced where streams once ran. Elders whispered of curses. Children cried. One night, as desperation twisted every brow, Ifosa took his flute and sat in the village square beneath the open skies. He played. The notes rose like prayer and fell like lament. It was no ordinary tune. It was a pleading, a mourning, a summoning. The earth heard, the gods heard, and then it came. A thunderous crack, a scent of petrichor, and rain burst from the heavens, as if a dam had been broken in the sky. It rained all night, and the villagers laughed and danced under the torrents. It rained and many feared the rain would never stop. The fields turned to rivers, rooftops leaked, and cooking fires died. Some trembled, whispering that Ifosa had called upon forces beyond the living. Others watched in silence, unsure whether to rejoice or run, wondering if the same flute that called the rain could ever bid it cease. And some those who had lost their farms to the rising floodwaters, whose yam mounds dissolved into mud, spoke with bitterness and blame. Ifosa's flood, they called it. His music became more than a delight. It became tradition. No festival truly began until Ifosa played. The new Yam Festival, once welcomed with gongs and chants, now waited for the first breath of his flute to signal the spirit's approval. On nights when the moon bloomed full, and villagers gathered with oil, lamps, and laughter, it was Ifosa melodies that threaded their joy into memory. Children would sit wide-eyed beneath their mother's wrappers, waiting for the first note, and elders claimed that the harvest tasted sweeter when his song welcomed the season. His name, his music, and the festivals became as unend in the memory of the village. None could tell where tradition ended and Ifosa began. He was more than a man, he was a legend walking. But legends are still men, and men are not immune to doubt. Years passed, and Ifosa's fame grew like fire in dry Harmattan. Praise flowed like palm wine, and children sculpted flutes from reed just to be like him. One market day, as he sat with his wife Omo beneath the Ogalisi tree, he turned and said, "They say they love me, but how do I know? Love is easy for the living. Would they mourn me if I were gone?" One moonless night, when the wind whispered through the palms and the stars blinked like shy eyes above, Ifosa sat with Omo beneath the old Ogalisi tree. The air was thick with the scent of earth and quiet thoughts. The village had settled into sleep, the drums long silenced, the fires turned to embers. In the hush, even the leaves seemed to hold their breath. Ifosa held his flute, not to play it, but to weigh it. His fingers ran along its worn body, tracing years of praise, sorrow, and song. "Omo," he said, his voice low, "they cheer when I play. They sing my name like a praise song. But I wonder, do they love me, or only the music I bring?" Omo turned to him, puzzled. "You are their joy, Ifosa. You bring light where there is none. That is love." He shook his head slowly. "Love for the living is easy. When the drum beats, they dance. When the flute sings, they smile. But if I were gone, would they weep? Would they remember? Or would their joy find another rhythm, another song?" She looked at him, eyes narrowing. "What are you saying?" He leaned closer. "Let them believe I have died just for a short while. Announce it. Watch their hearts. Then I will know the truth." Omo's breath caught. She pulled away slightly. "Ifosa, that is no small thing. You play with grief like a child near fire. Mourning is sacred, it cannot be borrowed." "I need to know," he insisted, eyes burning with restless hunger. "Not applause, not smiles, I need truth." "For 2 market weeks," he asked again and again between meals, "beneath the moon, even in silence." His words became a drumbeat in her mind, loud and unrelenting. At last, one night, Omo turned to him, her face, lined with worry, held both love and fear. "If we do this," she said, "it must be only for a short while. Promise me you'll return before sorrow eats someone whole." He nodded, his hand resting gently on hers. "I swear it." It happened very early in the morning, just as the first cock crowed, and the mist still clung to the earth. The shout of grief shattered the early morning hush like a calabash dropped on stone. It rose from Omo's hut, a wail so piercing it cleaved through the dawn mist and startled birds from the rafters. Women paused at the stream, baskets trembling in their hands. Men dropped their tools. Children clung to their mothers' wrappers. "The fluteman, Ifosa, he is gone." The words tumbled through the village like thunder rolling down a mountain path. Smoke from morning fires swirled strangely that day, as if even the hearths mourned. Drums remained silent. The flute, once the breath of Igodomigodo, now lay still beside his mat, covered in white cloth. Elders gathered, solemn-faced, muttering tales of how no soul had ever sung through a reed like Ifosa. Some wept openly. Others stood frozen, as if hoping it was a cruel wind playing tricks. Children refused to eat. Warriors set down their spears. Even the goats wandered slower, the air itself heavy with sorrow. No song was sung that morning, for how could one sing when the song itself had died? Ifosa was dead. The town criers announced gone to the land of the spirits. Grief swept Igodomigodo like wildfire. Drums beat low and mournful. The village square fell silent for the first time in living memory. And so the New Yam festival came, but no song rose to greet it. The melodies had vanished, as if the land itself mourned. And the people, broken yet proud, buried him as they would a king, with libation and lamentation, with stories told in dirge and earth soaked in tears. They carved his name in memory and whispered his music into legend. But as all things fade, grief became memory. Memory faded into story. And in time, the winds carried even that away. The sun rose slow that morning, veiled behind drifting mist and soft amber clouds. Dew clung to the grasses, and the thatched roofs of Igodomigodo glistened like the backs of resting lizards. Smoke curled lazily from hearths. Birds called, but the air still carried a silence too old for mourning. And through that silence walked a stranger. He came alone, his feet dusty from long travel, bearing no satchel, only a carved wooden flute slung across his back, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes deep and quiet like rain-filled calabash bowls. He spoke not a word. He simply walked to the iroko tree, Ifosa's tree, and sat beneath its shade. Then he played, and the wind stilled to listen. It was not mimicry, it was mastery. His flute sang not like one learning, but like one born with breath shaped by melody. The tune rose like the scent of rain after drought, fresh, aching, and soothing. The elders, seated under the eaves of the shrine, looked up. Children stopped mid-chore. Women carrying firewood froze mid-step. Warriors softened. For many evenings, the village gathered to hear the stranger play. They brought him gifts, ripe fruits, calabashes of palm wine, even the laughter of their children. His music warmed the hearths of Igodomigodo. Day by day, the stranger's fame grew. Children sang his songs. Warriors tapped their feet. Elders nodded in approval. But in time, the winds of praise stirred quiet questions. "He plays like a fossa," some whispered. "Perhaps even better," others replied. A few held their tongues, unsure. But slowly, quietly, the village began to forget. And from the shadows, Ifosa watched. Each note struck like a thorn in his chest. What was once his now belonged to another. The evening of reckoning came. It wasn't until one fateful day. The square was full. Fires crackled. The stranger played a haunting lullaby when, from the edge of the forest, a figure burst forth, cloaked in tattered cloth, beard wild, eyes aflame. "Give me my flute," he roared. The villagers screamed, "Ghost! Ghost!" scattering in fear. But one brave child flung a pebble. It hit Ifosa's foot and did not pass through. "Ghosts do not bleed," the child whispered. Whispers turned to murmurs. Murmurs to gasps. Ifosa stood firm, trembling with rage and shame. "This man," he said, "took what was mine. I am Ifosa. I never died. I watched as you gave him what once belonged to me." The stranger stood, flute in hand, defiant, but calm. The matter was brought before the king. The hall was quiet, heavy with breath and disbelief. Ifosa told his tale of love, pride, and the deception born of doubt. Omo, pale and trembling, confirmed it all. Then the stranger spoke. "I never claimed his place. I only played what was in my soul." The king, old, wise, wearing the leopard skin crown of his ancestors, stood. "Ifosa," he said, voice deep as thunder, "you were a god among men, but gods do not play with the hearts of mortals. You who feigned death must now embrace it in truth. For the dead and the living must not share the same path." He turned to Omo. "And you, who aided this mischief, must walk beside him." The drums beat thrice. Ifosa bowed his head. Omo wept. Together, they walked into exile, the forest swallowing their steps. To this day, when the flute is played at the New Yam Festival, elders say you can still feel Ifosa in the notes. A sorrow, a sweetness, a memory of a man who once made rainfall and hearts rise. And under moonlight, by the fire, the story is told, not just of a flute or a fall, but of how even the brightest stars must know when to rest.